Oh, hi, I'm Dana Birchman. Welcome to the Oh Hi Stories podcast. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jolean Fleck, Senior Vice President of People and Organizational Development at Delta Dental, and a self-proclaimed HR nerd. Jolene, I am so happy to have you and have this discussion with you. Welcome, first of all.
Thank you.
I am so excited because I admire you so much, the work you do as a chief people officer and who you are as a human. And I was so excited to bring you on this podcast for many reasons. Obviously, we've worked together in the past, but one thing that I really love is how you are forging forward in an industry where you've worked in both the public and the private sectors
Yeah.
and taking all those skills and everything you've learned. And so just excited to hear from you today about kind of the future of work and what you see and are seeing right now. But before we do that, let's set the stage and paint a picture of you and who you are, because I love your story of your background.
Oh, thanks.
So who
Yeah.
are you, Jolene?
Gosh, I ask myself that all the time. But so started out, in Tennessee, really. I spent most of my childhood in Tennessee. Lots of fishing, lots of outdoor stuff. And I grew up pretty modestly and ended up going to Austin Peay State University there. And I was so fortunate because they had a strong business department and College of Business there, and they had an HR concentration. And for me, learning about HR was like learning about the heart of a business, an organization. Like for me, it was so obvious that HR was where it all began. Everything circles around that. Everything revolves around the people, because the people are doing the work, right? And so if you don't have the right talent in place, if you don't have the right culture in place, the right skills, you're not going to go anywhere. So I loved it. I took to it. The day after graduation, I'm out here. I'm in Tempe and, started working at Rockford Fosgate and spent 10 years there learning HR, learning the ropes, and then got my MBA from Arizona State University, an amazing education. And I'm so excited. My kids are there, and it's a wonderful college, and I'm really proud of their association and my association with them. And I've spent time in a lot of different industries: shipping, software, heavy manufacturing, union, non-union. Delta Dental of Arizona is actually a tax-exempt organization. So we don't actually work for a profit. I mean, like, we make profit, obviously, but the whole point of it is that whatever we would be paying for in taxes, we divert that to the community. And so we have a foundation, and that's really the core of what we're doing. We're really about serving the community. It's kind of a really great blend of, it's got that public sector kind of heart, but that private sector sensibility and entrepreneurship. And it's been a great place. I've been here for 5 years. And I love it. I always believe that your work should be making you a better person, not just a better employee. And this is a place where we've been able to craft a culture that I think can do that, can achieve that for people.
I love that. People, I think that's at the
Yeah.
core of everything. I mean, it's one of my favorite topics, right? Picking and finding talent, identifying people and making it about people, whether
Yeah.
it's your employees or the people you're serving, your customers, your citizens, whatever that might look like.
Mhm.
So you and I met working in the government
Right.
sector,
Yes. Yeah.
where you were the chief people officer for a
Yeah.
large city. We worked there together. And I remember when I found out you'd come and you had this really unique background in the shipping industry, and you
Yeah.
did have software experience. And
Mhm.
I remember when you were hired, the question was, well, I don't know, she doesn't have any government experience,
Right.
which is a very
That's what I
common
thought.
question.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that might be the question a lot of people out there who are
Sure.
thinking about work and their future
Mhm.
careers might not be considering government, right?
Right.
But let's talk about that and
Yeah.
that path for you, because I think it's really critical for people that are in government to be looking and thinking to bring people in with skill sets outside and infuse that culture that way.
Yes.
But what are those things that, regardless of what industry you're in, shipping,
Mhm.
manufacturing,
Mhm.
government,
Yeah.
software,
Yep.
what are those similarities, right, that you
Yeah.
see no matter what industry you're in? And then, there's obviously differences and there's challenges at times.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I never subscribed to the idea that you had to be a certain flavor of HR to be a successful HR person. Like, there are folks who are kind of partisan like that. I never thought that because my medium is culture. And so that can be molded to help you further whatever your goal is. So, whatever your strategy is, if you are a city or a state or a nonprofit or a software startup, it all starts with what's your strategy?
Mm,
Who do you want to be? What are you trying to do? Value are you trying to create for the community
mm.
or for your customers?
The
And
why, the
then
why, the
the
why.
why, yeah, like, what's your why? And then from there, you can draw a straight line to, okay, so if I need this outcome, who can make that happen?
Mm,
Right? And so, what kind of talent do I need in my organization? How do I attract that talent? What's my employee value proposition? Who's going to want to come here and work here and feel comfortable, not just being where you are right now, but helping you learn and grow as an organization? So, you can't be a stagnant organization and be a healthy organization, right? Like you're growing, you're evolving, or you're in the process of decaying or dying. So
mhm,
the folks that you attract have got to be the people who can take it farther than where you started.
mm,
So it's kind of about trajectory, right?
mm,
So like not who you are now, and a lot of folks are probably listening and thinking, "Well, I'm not ready for that yet,"
mhm,
or "I'm too small for that yet." You're never too small for that because your strategy has to grow and evolve with your culture.
mhm,
And if you're not being intentional about it, it will happen for you
mhm,
instead of by you and in the direction that you want it to go. So you've got to have people, you've got to have culture, and then you've got to have your process. And those three things together, that's your corporate foundation. That's the
mhm,
foundation of your organization.
mhm,
And put those things in place early, be intentional about it, understand your employer value proposition, and I think those principles apply no matter where you are, right? Like, no matter who your customers are, using that medium, you can do what you need to do on the people side.
mm. I love that. And I think from my viewpoints, a very similar way that I always talk about it is shifting the way the world is,
Yeah.
right? Maybe government in particular can feel very stuck at times
Hmm.
because they have people in positions that have been doing jobs for decades and they haven't asked these important questions or maybe evaluated like,
Right.
do I have the right people?
Hmm.
And do I have the right culture in place
Yes.
to make them successful? When a position opens up and
Hmm.
you repost that job description to replace the person that's been in that I saw this all the time in the government space especially. And so when you talk about designing that plan has to constantly evolve, right? The way the
Yes.
world is
Yes.
evolving.
Yeah.
That's something that I saw in you when we got to work together, which was really cool, is your ability to shift. Obviously, none of us foresaw a pandemic and all of the
Right.
things that have changed the way we work. Also, that any organization can undertake this challenge to
Yes.
rethink the way they hire and attract and their culture,
Absolutely.
right? You don't have
Absolutely.
to be a brand new company just starting out
No.
or have a new leader that says this is the time.
Right.
Like, how do you create this type of culture and change in an organization like you've
Yeah.
done here at Delta Dental
Yeah.
that lasts?
Yeah. So it's about having an organization that's in a constant state of learning and growing.
Mm,
So that has to be part of the foundation because it will happen faster than you think.
mm,
You know, the world will shift under your feet. There are some effects that we did see coming, right? Like we did foresee the baby boomers would all be retiring. We used to call it the silver tsunami. We were waiting for these
mm.
boomers to start retiring. But then the pandemic happened and it all happened at once.
Yeah.
Like 4 years worth of retirement. Suddenly people said, you know what? My 401k looks real sweet right now and I
Hmm.
don't want to learn Zoom. So we are done. Thank you. So I watched someone quit just like in real time, just like, yeah, I'm not doing this. I don't know what this button does and I don't like this. And I'm peace out.
Can I just say though, I had an experience like that prior to the pandemic with an employee whose job was to involve the community.
Mhm.
And they were used to doing that in person, holding like
Right.
new resident socials and waiting, punching cookies and waiting for someone to come, but they never did.
Yeah.
And I said, no, 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 they're online. New
Yes.
residents are joining next door.
Yeah.
They are not, waiting for a pamphlet to come in their mail.
Right.
They're on social media. You have to go to them. You have to do that.
Yes.
And that person was a longtime employee, but said, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
So
It's
there's a
the trans
choice, right?
Yes.
Then we need to upskill them. We need to
Mhm.
teach them, help them, empower them
Yeah.
with the tools of how this job has shifted. Hey, we don't hire audiovisual technicians to push buttons at council meetings anymore. We
Right.
hire high end video journalists who can create engaging content,
Mhm.
right? That
Yeah.
job doesn't
Yeah.
exist. But
Right.
here's how it looks now, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I think that that's such an interesting example because you see this, I
Yes.
mean, I'm sure every day in the world that you're in, this HR people world, right?
Mhm.
But this is in every
It's
lane,
everywhere. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, which is going back to that learning and growing. This is a moving target, and so you have to be comfortable being in motion. My job doesn't look like it did, 20 years ago when we had paper resumes being faxed, and it has happened slowly in some areas, quickly in others,
Hmm.
but you have to have that agile mindset and be flexible about what it looks like, be inflexible about the outcome,
Mhm.
right? And so if you're measuring an input, at the beginning of a process, or you're measuring the process in terms of how are you tracking performance for employees, put it at the outcome or the
Mhm.
impact, right? So if you're telling an employee, your mission here with us is to work with our provider partners and make sure they're having a positive experience with us, make sure that this equation is balancing and we're communicating with them in a transparent way. That's the outcome, right? Like the how is where they can bring their unique flair and their talents, and like the how part of their job is up to their creative sensibilities about that. So
Mm.
the how is always going to change. I mean, AI now is a huge topic. I met someone recently who described it as like AI, like people who are good at AI, they're like that person 20 years ago who was great at Excel. And he's like,
Mm.
that's what it is. It's just another tool like Excel. And
Mhm.
so if you roll up your sleeves and you start playing with it and you figure it out and you start exploring with it a
Mm.
little bit,
Mhm.
like there used to be people who would take their calculators out and do the math and then put them in Excel files, right? And that's how they used to engage with Excel. But then everybody learned it and they got good at
Yes.
it. They got comfortable with it. And this is now just another tool,
In
like a
your tool belt.
telephone
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
use to do your job. AI is no different. The next thing after AI is going to be no different.
I remember when we first started down the process of creating our open data portal and our open data system in Gilbert, and people were very intimidated just by the word data.
Yes.
What is data? So we
Yes.
held these brown bag lunches where we just let people come in. It's like, it's a like on a social media post. It's a video view. And
Right.
people are like, oh, it's not that
R-
scary. It's not a four-letter
Exactly.
word that I didn't. And
Right.
I feel like it's the same
Same
thing with
thing.
AI.
Yep.
And you're exactly right. It's
Yeah.
another tool in your tool belt
Yes.
of thinking about how can you be more efficient? How can you be more
Right.
effective in
Yes.
reaching your customer? And there's a lot of fear that comes with change. I think of when I was in the TV industry and I was at MTV and you were not asked to film and shoot and edit and write. You had people that did that and you could kind of stay in this one lane and you did this one particular area of work and you chose that. You were either a technical person or you were a writer. And then suddenly the world shifted and the industry shifted and you had to do it all.
Yes.
And if you didn't know how, you were out of a job.
Right.
And so I think about that a lot. And I think
Yes.
about how the various industries I've been in, whether it was government or not,
Mhm.
had to do that to survive.
Right.
And that's something that I really admire about you and how you build teams. When you go into an organization, what are the
Mhm.
things that you look for as far as like bringing different people to the table? Because it's a
Mhm.
big thing to push people in certain industries to hire outside of the box. I'll give you one example too. When I took a job in the news business, my background was more political focused. I hadn't
Yeah.
come up through the traditional track
Mhm.
of local news, right?
Mhm.
And so that maybe they weren't thinking about hiring someone like me. And I said, but you've branded yourself the place for politics. You should be hiring people with a political background. You
Yes.
should be hiring people like
Yes.
me. But I had to
Right.
basically beg the HR person to
Right.
take a chance on me.
Mhm.
And the same thing happened when I went to work in government. I didn't have any government experience, but I have my master's degree in public policy. I worked in these other industries and I can
Right.
infuse what I bring from the private sector
Right.
into the public sector.
Yeah.
Hire me, hire me.
Yeah.
And you are someone that would do that, but not everyone would.
Right. And so I think I want to go back to the outcome of that, right? So, like, what you did was point out the outcome that they would have if they
Mm,
hired you, right? So, like, you're a political news organization, right? Like, doesn't this make sense? Oh, yeah, but they weren't there yet.
mm,
So, you can do the same thing with your organization. And so, understanding what it is that that org needs. And it's often not the verbatim thing on the job description.
mm,
Although the very first thing that you hire for, the first thing I hire for is competence, right? Like you have to be good at what you do.
mm,
And people who love what they do, they are looking for every tiny little new thing. When you're good at something and you're surrounding yourself with that, you are up to date. Like you're in that space and you're connecting with other people in that space and you're reading things about that space. And so it's very important in an organization to have channels for that information to flow up and down.
mm,
So information has to flow up through the organization and not just down. So if you don't have mechanisms for doing that, these pockets of information can just get trapped
mm,
at certain levels. We just did this really cool event. We call it Shark Tank. So
mm,
what it is we engage the organization at all levels to just brainstorm. And so we give them information about our strategy, what are our strategic pillars, what are our differentiators. We give them the same strategy information that the exec team has. And we're like, okay, so what's next? Like,
mm.
what are you seeing? You know, we provide some question prompts, but then employees show up and, you know, we just did this like earlier this week. So it was super
Amazing.
exciting. There
Bring
was
your
so much
ideas to the
energy.
table and
Yes,
yes.
and so you're on a team and it's cross-functional, all levels
Mm,
together, and they show up and they are presenting their top, like, 3 ideas. And it's stuff that you've never thought of. It's stuff that maybe you heard about, but you're like, "Oh, that's a different application of that," or,
mhm,
"Oh, I didn't even realize that was a problem."
mm.
But if we weren't engaging those folks
Yep, and they weren't at the
and
table.
they weren't at the table.
Mhm,
We don't often just go out of our way to go talk to somebody in a different department and say,
mm,
okay, so what's new in your life? You know, like what's new in your profession, right? So, like creating these opportunities where people from divergent sectors, divergent places in the org, they come together and they just play with
mhm,
ideas, you
mhm,
know? And last year we did this and we ended up having strategic initiatives that came directly from this process.
mhm,
And so this is one way you can do it. I'm sure there's lots of different ways that orgs can do this.
mhm.
And, you know, we're perfecting it. You know, we're trying some different things, but, you know, we'll do it again next year. I have no doubt.
I think that's such an amazing point because sometimes you'll go and you'll ask the creatives, the marketing team, what are your ideas
Yeah.
for this campaign? I remember when we were way back over a decade ago trying to get people during the census
Oh,
unfortunately to answer their door. And so
yeah.
we were thinking, how do we get them to answer their door? Because at the time, they didn't have a digital online component. They do now, so they've come a long way. And so we were sitting around trying to brainstorm, and my graphic designer, who's very quiet, but was there, and I'm like, come on, we need some ideas. And she spoke up and said, come and knock on my door, Three's Company. And so we branded the whole campaign. We used that font.
Adorable.
And I still think about her in that
Yeah.
moment where she was usually working solitarily, wouldn't necessarily be with the group brainstorming.
Right.
If she had not been in the room
Mm-hmm.
at the table and
Yes.
felt comfortable and
Yes.
empowered
Yes.
to speak and bring her idea. It really is so true.
Yes. So there's a concept in culture work. It's called power distance. It's the amount of power that the least powerful person is willing to extend to the most powerful. Like, how much imbalance are we going to tolerate as the least powerful people? And so, if that power distance is very high, what it means is that people in entry level roles probably don't talk to people in senior level roles. Very often, they're afraid to
Mhm,
talk. There are probably a lot of cultural reasons why that is, but it is a huge indicator that you are not a very innovative organization if the people closest to the work don't feel comfortable raising their hands and saying, I have a crazy idea. Or when they do, they get shut down or belittled or
mm,
ridiculed or, something negative happens to them because they open their mouth, they will never do it again.
Mhm.
They have learned their lesson, and everybody watching also learned the same lesson. You are not interested in anyone's idea but your own.
Mhm.
And when someone shows up with a different idea and they see a negative outcome, you have just shut down innovation for your organization
Mhm.
for as long as you're there.
Mhm.
So it comes back to the culture you're creating,
Mhm.
and how are you not just encouraging people to speak up, but really rewarding that? Who in your organization is recognized? Who gets promoted? And what are the
Mm.
stories you talk about? What are the rituals that you've put in place to facilitate all of this? Like, that's how you weave culture into an organization.
That's amazing. Another thing that I love and admire about you is you're a constant learner. I've noticed since I've known you, you're always pushing yourself to go try new things, learn more. You're a
Hmm.
student,
Yep.
go see the world. This was a concept I talked about in a previous podcast. Get out and go
Hmm.
see what you can find and come back and infuse it in. And I've
Yes.
noticed that you do that and you take those learnings into everywhere you go and you've worked. So, talk a little bit about your personal commitment to growth. And when you're a busy working
Yeah.
mother like you are, it can be something that we tend to put aside
Yeah.
and don't prioritize.
Yeah.
And it's something I've seen you really throw a lot of yourself and effort into.
Hmm.
And so I love that. And so I'd love to hear how you do that also to lift up others.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate. I've never had a whole lot of problems with addiction aside from learning. So, like, I can't imagine anything feeling as good as, like when you learn something new and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I
Mm,
have never thought of that before." And it just exploded everything in my brain. And I
mm,
can't wait to figure this out or apply this someplace else. I remember when I got my master's degree driving home at night and just feeling euphoric at
mm,
what I had learned. I
mm,
think some of it is just kind of how my brain is constructed and the way I respond to new information.
mhm,
And I know sometimes when people come up against new information, they tend to shut down or that doesn't fit into what I already know. So some of it is, kind of my personality, but I do love sharing that because I often see people have the same experience where I'll go someplace, I'll bring it back to the org. I was recently at the Harvard Business School doing a program, and so I will come back and call it like Jolene's discount Harvard.
exactly.
Right.
But I love that
So,
taking the
yeah,
ideas and yes, and infusing it, right?
right.
Not everyone can go with you. Not
Sure.
everyone gets a chance. I used to always go to these just government conferences.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait. I gotta go get back into the other world and then bring to
Yes. Bring
government
it
what I'm
back.
finding at the Adobe conference or wherever it was that I was
Yes.
going. And so I love it. It's like Jolene's mini Harvard. Can I
Exactly.
come boot
My
camp?
discount, yeah. So, but not just me, right? So, like,
Right.
we have different standing meetings with our directors, with our managers and supervisors. And when someone goes off and does a training, they bring it back and they share with the group, what they learned. They'll share, sometimes you get the slides and the materials. And I learn a lot that way, just, watching other people attend things like this and share things. And that's part of communicating our identity as a
Mm,
learning and growing organization, that this is incumbent on all of us. It's not just one person's responsibility to train and develop everybody. All of us
mhm,
are constantly training and developing each other, especially when we feel comfortable sharing that knowledge or, pointing out to someone, hey, I noticed you were doing this. There's a different way of doing that. Let me show you. When you're open and comfortable in an environment like that, like, you can make it just a part of the benefits of working someplace.
I love it. You have had children, you have
Oh, yeah.
adopted a
Yeah.
child, you have,
I'm a stepmom.
you're a stepmom. You've had all of those pieces of your life that have really like brought you to where you are. I think it's so great that you still find the time and commitment to yourself and making the world better by the work and the impact that you're making.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there were a lot of twists and turns that I thought, well, now my life is ruined. Sometimes things happen, life happens, and you think, well, this is not the way I pictured it. This is not how I thought it was going to go. But then shortly after that, you kind of dust yourself off and you say, you know what? This is going to be better. This is going to be so much better. because I know all of that, but now I get to do it, with more insight, and I get to do it with people who I am choosing to be with and help. And I think that you can turn these little things into huge triumphs
Mm,
and, do your best to fall up, if you can. So, yeah, there's been a lot of failure, or maybe at the time I would have described it as failure. And I, was very discouraged or depressed about things that didn't work out because I hadn't planned it that way.
mm,
And I wouldn't have planned it that way. But if things had gone my way, I would not be in this wonderful place that I am right now. So you just have to be so thankful sometimes and
mm,
trust that it's going to work out and have faith because it's never not worked out for me, I guess, at
mm,
least.
mhm.
So you just have to keep going.
Perseverance,
Yeah.
that's the key.
Yeah.
And I think as a woman who I admire, you are amazing. And in today's world, we need more people like that. And you're such a shining example of all of it and the culture piece of what you do in your work and how
Hmm.
you live your life. And I think that's another really important point because you do a lot outside of work. You're very involved
Yeah.
in the community and you sit on boards and you're always reaching out to others and
Yeah.
helping lift others up around you like me.
That was a
And
differentiator for me. When I figured out that my career wasn't for me and I made it about other people,
mm,
that was a changing point. That was a turning point for me.
mm. That's funny because that's how I feel about the public service element of
Yeah.
my work. Yes, there's a lot that you can contribute, but when you can see the impact of what you do,
Yeah.
it's just such a powerful thing. And I think
Yeah.
in local government, you really can see a
Yes.
direct impact of who you're serving and how you're making communities better and people's lives better. And being raised by two teachers, I think that was something that just was inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in my blood and that feeling. And so everyone finds that a little bit differently, but
That's
I
true.
think it's just so critical. We talked about a why earlier and like your organizational why, but that
Mhm.
personal why
Yes.
is also really, really important too.
Yeah.
So, what do you tell your daughters who are both college age?
Mhm.
Well,
Yep.
one post college now. Oh my
I
God, how is that
know.
possible out in the
And
working world
she's
in the
working.
government
Yes,
space?
exactly. Yeah.
Yes,
She's loving it.
in a city locally. And
Yep.
so she is learning that too. What advice do you give them about paving their path to the future?
Yeah. Well, I listen to a lot of Scott Galloway podcasts. And so I agree with him on a lot of things. And a lot of it is first get good at something. Find something that you're good at. And it might not be something that you think is very exciting, but it will become exciting because nothing is more exciting than being great at something and then using that talent to help somebody else.
Hmm.
And then that is just your fuel. So once that little perpetual motion thing starts, then I think they'll be fine. And you don't have to worry about them because I know she's on her path. I
Mhm.
know all of my kids will find their path. And once you see that, you feel like, okay, we're good. They'll be fine.
I've done
Yeah.
my job.
Yeah. Yeah, they found their thing.
Exactly, I love that, and it
Yeah.
goes back to this is similar theme about passion
Yeah.
and how you described what you look for in an employee or
Yes.
finding your children's passions or maybe reconnecting with your own to understand what is that next phase of your life or your
Mhm.
career, whatever it might be, and think about what drives you and motivates you and where you find that joy, and
Yes.
then lean into it, and I
Right.
think I've learned that, and it's really so true, and also being able to be your authentic self. Another thing that I really do love about you is, like, you are who you are, and I think that's really critical, and in a place of employment,
Yes.
something
Yes.
you talk a lot about values.
I wanna add, though, I'm privileged to be able to do that, right? Like,
Mhm,
there are a lot of folks who work in situations where they don't feel comfortable
mm,
being their authentic self, or they know for a fact if they showed up as their authentic self, it would be
problem.
a problem.
Mhm,
Um, and I'm so fortunate to have the boss I have to work where I do, where
mhm,
I do feel like I can show up and put my all into this and everybody else is doing the same thing and it feels safe, right?
mm,
But not everybody is in a position where they feel that way.
mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Also, too, looking to find that harmony of a place that you can be yourself and
Mhm.
and be the mom and be, the
Right.
sometimes a little disheveled or maybe a little late,
Right.
to the party kind of person. Like I
Yes.
think that that's just such a critical lesson too when we
Mhm.
talk about teaching our daughters how to find their path in life or whatever that might look like. It's one thing I've really learned is not to shrink who I am
Yes.
and not to have to do that. And
Right.
again, not everyone gets that luxury. And
Mhm.
I've been in situations where
Right.
I haven't had that luxury. But I've learned that to me personally, it's something that's critically important is,
It's worth it.
being able to say what I think and
Mhm.
feeling valued in that way. And you are someone who I worked with who really empowered that and kind of loved those things about me and my
Yeah.
team and others. And I just watched you bring out the best in people. I'd love to know too, what do you see in the future? You're one of those forward thinking visionaries that I love sitting down with and thinking about, like, where are we going? Right.
Yeah.
So where are we going
Yeah.
in the people space, in the work culture space?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think that the connection with technology is going away. And I think that the people who are going to be most successful will be the ones who are flexible, comfortable learning, who are looking ahead, but not too far, right? But just like, okay, what's the next thing? Just the next increment, being open to what's next and synthesizing things. We are in a certain space, like we're in the insurance space right now, but what are we adjacent to? And what are we great at that
Mm,
we could parlay into success in another area? So sometimes innovation isn't something completely brand new, it's just a different combo.
mm.
So being a synthesizer, being a learner,
And open to change. I
open to
think
change.
the world is just everything's just moving so quickly,
Yes.
more than ever, I would say, and embrace it. I think
Yeah.
that's a huge challenge,
Yes.
especially for people that have been in particular jobs for a long time. I think it's even more important you create a culture like you've talked about so eloquently of a place where people can thrive. I mean,
Yeah.
everything that you've said kind of leads us to that place of having an organization that can shift with the world.
I read a book one time that said any process that can be automated eventually will be automated.
Mm,
So it is the uniquely human things that will end up winning the day. So, like things that AI cannot duplicate. So, that creativity, the collaborative kinds of processes, and that magic that happens when you just get all the right people in the room and you start tossing ideas back and forth. And like you said, like the Three's Company thing, right? Like,
mhm.
that kind of spark, that cannot be automated, that cannot be replaced, and so, get good at creativity and new ideas.
I love that. And again, back to the people. It's
Yes,
all about the people, and it
yes.
always will be.
Yep.
Oh, this has been so fun. Okay,
Yeah,
before I let
thanks.
you go,
Okay.
I'm going to do a little rapid fire just to
Alright.
end on something light and fun. Okay, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
So, I really like thinking I usually have a whole lot to do. So, it's my to-do list. Like, "Okay, today I'm doing XYZ." Yeah, I've got stuff to do, got stuff going on.
Can't spend it in bed. You got to get up and get
I
going.
gotta
Yes.
do it. Yeah.
What's the best piece of parenting advice you have?
I think it's true that you can't decide who your kids are, but you can decide how they feel about who they are.
Mm,
And so making sure that they feel as good as possible about who they are, I think that's something to remember.
I love that.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for young people looking to get their first new job or new entrepreneur starting a business? Like you said, people
Hmm.
just kind of getting out there in the world. What advice do you have?
Meet older people.
Mm,
Like people even,
like us?
right. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
no,
Find
it's
a
happened.
find a Gen Xer is what you need. A magical prophet to
Yes,
help with
exactly.
great music recommendations. That's who you need in your
Yes,
life.
amen.
Someone who's been in a record store and wears the cool t-shirts and have been to the good concerts.
Yes,
That's
and
who
knows
you
what a
need.
VHS tape is. Come
Yes,
on.
rewind, be kind.
Yes.
So, yeah, but meet people who are older than you and ask them for advice and make them a part of like your council. Like everybody
Mm,
needs a crew of mentors. Find a mentor,
mm.
even if they might not be exactly where you think you want to go. We all need people who give us some guardrails, some good advice, and find those people.
I love that. So I know we talked a little bit about this, but what is the single best thing that you do to get it all done?
I make lists and I try to incorporate them into my calendar. So I write things down because sometimes you look at everything and you're like, well, yeah. I mean, when I look at it like this, there's no way I'm doing all this. So these things get scooted to Tuesday, and writing it down will help you be a little more realistic. And you also get this wonderful dopamine hit, or maybe I do, when you cross things off
Oh,
your list.
best.
Man, it's
Little
the
check
best.
on. It is.
So yes, make the list and then cross things off and then celebrate your achievements. Yeah.
Okay, finally, last one. Where do you look for inspiration?
So it's usually people very different from me. I've recently been able to spend time with people from Nigeria, from Australia, from Ireland recently at this training, and people who are very different from you. Like you will get the coolest ideas and the coolest perspectives and things you've never thought of or would never think of, right? If you had just stayed in your office all day. So I guess once again, it kind of comes down to meeting people and talking to them
Mm,
and, making space in your head for these new ideas.
I love it. Well, I am sure glad I met you
Me
and that our
too.
paths crossed and that we were
Yes.
able to work together and have continued our amazing friendship. Who
Yep.
knows what great ideas will come from here,
I
but
know.
thank you for being here and for
Thank
just
you.
being an awesome, awesome person.
Thank you for being awesome.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ojai Stories podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. And visit our website at ohaicommunications.com.